If you are in love with Canadian entertainment podcasting, let me hear you scream. Whole stadium in England, which, as we have established in multiple episodes before, is part of Canada, because who's on the back of Canadian money? Who's on the back of England money? Bada boom, bada bing, same king, same Canadian thing, right? So it's as simple as that. And with that, we welcome you back for another emotional, introspective, beautiful, serene, creative episode of one of the greatest Canadian entertainment focused podcasts that we have ever seen in the history of this earth. Some people say that the earth has been around for billions of years, while over the past year or so, we have entered a new period in earth. Sure, there may have been a few before, but I think, and I'm not trying to be extremely arrogant with a twinge of awesomeness, but I think this is one of the greatest podcasts in the world, with a focus on everything that is going on in the Canadian entertainment sphere. From, yes, the perspective, you don't always see this from the perspective of someone who is currently in the midst of a burgeoning Canadian entertainment path. It is a journey, it is a quest. Like Frodo to the mountain. That is what we're doing. I wonder if I would love to see Frodo in the Rockies. I've never been to the west side of Canada, and I know that may piss some people off, and you might want to throw snowballs at me, and I say, you're right, I should have done that, but I made some horribly irresponsible financial decisions in the beginning of my late teens, early adulthood, and I am forever I'm figuring that out. So, but I do want to go over there, and I would love to see if one of the most famous hobbits of all time could really vibe out there. And you know what I was thinking? I am almost under the impression, and I could be absolutely wrong. Am I wrong to say that some of the Rocky Mountains stretch into Alberta? Because Alberta is almost in the middle of this country, so some people could call that middle Canada. And you got to wonder if J.R.R. Tolkien, famous Canadian, yes, I believe he is English, so England is a province of Canada. We've been through this multiple times. Go watch the look at the extra podcasts. So it is, it's possible that he based the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings off of Middle Canada, aka Alberta, and some of Western Canada, aka BC and Yukon. Oh no! Oh boy. Siri. She's always listening and wanting to chime in when you least expect it, and I guess that's why we love her. So what was happening there, just for full disclosure, the audio cut out of these headphones, they're not being made by a Canadian company, but they could be made by a Canadian manufacturer. Who knows? They're made by Sony, full disclosure. I've had them for a number of years. I got them as a Christmas present. Full disclosure, in Canada, also Santa wears red, white. We've been through this anyways. But they cut out for a second, and I was absolutely frightened that there was a chance that the microphone wasn't working because we had some microphone issues last time. Sure Microphone. Again, you can purchase them at Long & McQuaid. So yes, we can talk about it because Long & McQuaid is a Canadian institution. Anyways, Siri, she's put on Canadian iPhones and Canadian software. So I mean, yeah, she lives everywhere, but one of her residences is Canada. Sort of like how Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell had a cottage within the Muskokas. Now, that is a perfect place to start with our first piece of Canadian entertainment news. I saw a TikTok recently. It could have been an Instagram reel that says that Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn are selling their cottage in the Muskokas on Lake Rousseau. And you gotta wonder why they're doing that. Is it because they cannot handle that the Price is Right is coming to Canada? You gotta ask yourself, because for their entire time having a cottage in Canada, there has only been a Price is Right. Well, there hasn't been a Price is Right. Canada. There has only been a Price is Right in the States and maybe elsewhere. I can't pop up the Wikipedia page, but I know for a fact there hasn't been one in Canada. And recently, I've been seeing casting calls everywhere. You got to be on the Price is Right Canada. You got to be on the Price is Right Canada. So I think, you know what? I don't think it's a big stretch to say that they weren't ready for that, and they said, this isn't the Canada I grew up with. So maybe that's why they're selling. And I mean, you know what? We all make our own decisions, so that's fair. But the Price is Right Canada is coming to Canada. They're going to start filming soon. We have seen that Howie Mandel is hosting. So I don't know how Drew Carey's going to handle that, because Howie Mandel's on a lot of American shows as well. So will Drew Carey be upset? Will he not tour Canada anymore? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves as Canadian entertainment journalists. We are right on the forefront of all news and all media pertaining to Canadian entertainment. So those were some incredible stories off the top from the general Canadian entertainment zeitgeist. Now, moving on to more personal matters. If you've been following me on social media or anything like that, you may have noticed that I am back I'm kind of in a Crabby Joe's renaissance, I would say. And some people around the world, because I know we have faithful listeners all around the world, because they are saying to themselves, we're hearing so much about Canadian entertainment from where we are. I want to hear the freshest take. I want to hear just like a very balanced perspective of, what it is to be a Canadian entertainer. So they're tuning in. So you might be wondering, what is Crabby Joe's? And even, this could be a cross-country sort of question, because as far as we know, there are no Crabby Joe's, from what I know, in Alberta, Vancouver, Newfoundland, England, which we've talked about. There isn't a Crabby Joe's in England, but that is something we need to work on right now to help. Tim Hortons is going over there, so we got to get a Crabby Joe's there. But Crabby Joe's happens to be an Ontario sort of based, rude, FU style sort of restaurant. You know what? It's been around since the mid-90s, 1996. The first one opened up in Ingersoll, Ontario, close to Woodstock, right in the middle of the southern Ontario peninsula, as we've discussed before, ripped off by Italy. Anyways, so if you've been following me on social media for the past few years, I feel like every couple of years, maybe I make like a permanent post to my grid or a story about Crabby Joes. I've even years ago changed my Facebook cover photo to the man himself, Crabby Joe, that doesn't give a flying F what you think. He's cooking your food. He's wiping his ass with it. He really doesn't give a shit. You better eat it. You're going to love it or get the out of here. And you know what? Crabby Joe's is actually a genius idea because up until 1996, and I mean, beyond, Canadians were, the stereotype is you are the nicest souls in the world. You're so kind. You're so sorry about everything. Well, this was the first Canadian ever. Well, he's a character, but I'm sure he's based off of someone. He said, no, I'm not sorry. In fact, you could take that story and stick it up and wipe your with it. They shut down Canada. Or I don't know if they actually did, but metaphorically, Canada was shut down for a couple of years when he came in because we just couldn't handle it. And they kind of barred him off to the province of Ontario, the southern point, and he ran his stuff there. He's been kind of he's part of a restaurant group. I'd say one of the big, maybe the second biggest restaurant group in Canada. I don't know what the restaurant groups are like elsewhere, but we have a big restaurant group, and food, of course, is a part of entertainment. You always feel entertained when you are eating, so this is a large focus of the episode today. So I don't know if they have restaurant groups elsewhere around the world. I'm sure they do. Conglomerates, yeah, sort of like your Yum brands. Or, I don't know, the thing that owns Popeyes and Tim Hortons company. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. There is this mega group called Recipe Unlimited. They own all the great Canadian restaurants, New York Fries, Swiss Chalet, the New York Italian-themed restaurant, Eastside Mario's, Boston Pizza. They own all the famous, amazing Canadian restaurants, taste of Canadian cuisine. They own them all. But there's this, it's kind of it's a Canadian David versus Goliath situation. And no hate on either one of them. I'm just reporting it as I see it. Please don't sue me, either one of you. This is just my own perspective. I'm just spinning some metaphors in here. So let me say what I want to say. So Recipe Unlimited is kind of like, the big giant at the top of the beanstalk just effing around in a good way. They're having fun. They're getting all these new restaurants, Burger Sprees. Come climb the beanstalk. We're having a party up here. But there is this other small group who, I guess, got a pair of magic beans, sold the cow for the magic beans, and their magic beans are coffee culture, Chuck's Roadhouse, Union Burger, and the one that started it all, one of the greatest restaurants ever to come into this country, to be one of the greatest Canadian inventions of all time, Crabby Joe's. And this one's called Obsidian Group, if I am not mistaken. So they're like probably the second biggest restaurant conglomerate in this country, and they have a handful of restaurants. And one thing that they are doing lately, and I think you can read about this on the Wikipedia page, the Crabby Joe's Wikipedia page, they, from what I know, have been saying to Crabby Joe restaurants, well, they've been saying to Crabby Joe restaurants, you have two options. From what I know, from from what I know, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure they have said you got to renovate your Crabby Joe's restaurant if you are a franchise owner, or you got to turn it into a Chuck's Roadhouse. And I got much love for Chuck's. We'll get into that in a second. So every single Crabby Joe in this country, in the world, in this province, a province is kind of like a state, a county perhaps, I don't know, has been renovated from the original sort of version 1 Crabby Joe. I think there's probably a version 1.5 because I was doing some research. There were some, such as the King Street Crabby Joe's downtown Kitchener. That's later on, 14 years after Crabby Joe's had been made. King Street comes along. Fairway was the original location. Fairway is kind of like the Sunset Boulevard of Kitchener-Waterloo. You must check it out. Neon sign, big signs everywhere. Very interesting. But they put one downtown in 2010 or something, about 14 years after the invention of Crabby Joe's, 1996. And it was still kind of the version 1 sort of Crabby Joe. And the version 1 Crabby Joe's is very focused on the man himself, Joe, the guy who will punch you in the face if you ask for a side of French fries, but you love, I don't know. He won't actually do that, but he will say so. He's never been, he's not violent. I'm sorry, he's not violent, but he will give you a verbal lashing. He's one of the best. That is just so good at what he does. He's so good at being crabby. He's like our Oscar the Grouch kind of, or like those two Muppets. Like that's who he was in Canada. But the thing is, all these Crabby Joe's franchises, as far as I know, in Canada, were kind of given an ultimatum. It could be a kind of ultimatum, and I'm sure they're cool with it. Whatever, they said, I think around 2017 or so, they started changing all of them to kind of, not make the focus on Joe himself. They took him straight out of the on the top of the restaurants. He seemed to be kind of not there anymore. I'm pretty sure he's not really on the menu anymore. I think he's on the website when they showed an old picture, but it's now the whole logo is just Crabby Joe's, all in letters. It's letters. We don't know where Joe has been. And you know what? I will say, backtracking to around 2010, 2014, in my research I've found, around that time, they even had a Crabby Joe's costume, a mascot. Like, things were going somewhere. And then 2016, 2017, it seems, I don't know if there's a falling out between the restaurant and Joe, if Joe left silently. You said you could keep my name, but that's it. No more likeness. He could be like many people. Maybe he moved out east or something like that. You hear about a lot of people in Ontario who moved out east, moved out west. They want to get a new start. Maybe he changed his name to Kind Jim, or Kind Gregory. I don't know. But it's the cool thing sometimes about Canada, and sometimes I have to remind myself this, is sometimes, it's easy to get jealous of our neighbors down south. I know, obviously, they're going through some crazy, as everyone's going through crazy. But in terms of they gotta have Dunkin' Donuts. Oh, they gotta have Krispy Kreme first. Oh, they're the country that invented Burger King. So sometimes it's like, oh man, oh, they make all these movies, man. I know, just from this sort of perspective, from like a food franchise entertainment perspective, a little bit, maybe everyone's had a bit of that. Maybe you haven't had that at all, which I say, that's awesome. We're just being real here. But the thing is like with some of these like fast food franchises, such as Burger King, They have a whole Wikipedia page of minute by minute the changes, the company changes, the structural changes, the history of the company. But in a place like Canada, it's going to be a bit hard finding out, who the first franchise owner of New York Fries was. Of course, I have read the sort of thing that two guys bought the rights from somewhere in New York, and you know what? Or, why Crabby Joe left. You have to do some digging. There's some mystery in the history of our franchises in Canada, food history, especially with the mascots, And that's kind of cool if you are a fan of mysteries like I am, because if you want to know more about this, you have to do some digging. You have to do some digging to find some stuff. And one of my big questions is I go on the Internet Archive, right? I'm whatever. Come find me, whatever. I go on the Internet Archive and I'm going through screenshots after screenshots of old Crabby Joe's websites all the way back to the year 2001, I think is when they got their first website, 5 years into the game. I'm seeing that they had all this merch, this beautiful merch, hand-stitched it looked like, with a lot of focus on a sort of freaking, hand-stitched, sort of like, what's it freaking called? Hand-stitch, oh my gosh. You know what I mean. Hand stitch, embroidered. Yeah, okay. Sorry. It's been a crazy few weeks. So it's been a ride, right? So they had all this cool merch and stuff like that, like high quality stuff, rugby shirts, very well thought out design, merchandise. And it's like, where is all this? That's a question I was, wondering to myself. Where is all this? A place like Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, you can look that up. That's on the Wikipedia page. Or there's just thousands of pieces of merch on Facebook Marketplace, eBay. With Crabby Joe's, it's very different. They're right now, as we speak, Friday, October 17th, 2025 on Facebook Marketplace in Aylmer, Ontario. Plenty of people have sent me this. There is a Crabby Joe cutout that was most likely used in the restaurant. It doesn't look, I could be wrong, but it doesn't quite look like it'd be on an outdoor sign, but maybe it looks kind of wooden. It's on sale for $400 Canadian on Facebook Marketplace right now, and that's one of the only pieces of merchandise we can find right now. We can find a glass mug with the original logo, but other than that, nothing. And that is the kind of interesting thing. At first, I was like, oh, dang, I wish I could just find out where all this stuff is in a landfill. And it made me think, it's like, I swear, I literally looked over every... I logged in on the library website to look at archives of all the newspaper articles ever mentioning Crabby Joe's. I was adjusting my Google searches to, starting in 1995. I went on Bing, I went on DuckDuckGo, I even went on AOL trying to find every piece of media I could find about Crabby Joe's. And I think, and I don't want to, this is hours. I'd say I probably spent over the past week, to be honest, I probably spent around 7 to 10 hours on this investigation, and I could talk about for a while. And I think, which is interesting because I feel like I would have not hit a cap if I was looking at, let's say, your Jersey Mike's, your Subway, Quiznos. I would have not hit a cap at 10 hours, but I think I'm almost capped out of every piece of findable information about Crabby Joe's on the internet, unless there's some stuff behind Canadian military servers, which It's possible. It's possible. I don't know, how involved in the back networks of government that Crabby Joe could be the mascot. I don't know. Who's under the mascot. We have to ask ourselves. I don't know. But I feel like I've found everything I could. And I was a bit depressed about that. I was a bit saddened. My heart was broken in an insane amount of minute little shards that not even Sora from Kingdom Hearts would pick up and use against a heartless Donald Duck. Would not pick it up in Kingdom Hearts and do anything with it. Too small. It broke. My heart nearly broke into dust until it came back on the ground. It went back straight into my heart, my full beating heart again, because I said, you have maxed out with Crabby Joe's research on the internet. You should be thankful, because now that is the sign to go outside, to start talking to people, to start making phone calls, to start trying to find Joe. Where are you, Joe? We want to know. This country has a lot of mystery. This land has a lot of mystery. And this is a mystery I'm interested in. And I know I made a rather harsh Instagram reel a couple, weeks ago, where I was saying that the Crabby Joe's logo redesign that went from, this beautiful character, this bald character that we love with all of our hearts, to just the simple words Crabby Joe's, taking away the character. I said it was one of the worst logo redesigns in history. And you know what? I feel like someone from Obsidian Group, I'm just guessing, Canada in some ways, I'm sure word gets around. I'm sure someone's may have seen that. I'm sorry for being a bit harsh. I'm sorry, maybe you don't want to talk to me, and I get it. I wouldn't want to be come after like that. That is just my personal opinion. It comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of anger and fear. Maybe it comes from a place of fear, So I'm sorry, maybe there's some stuff behind the scenes I didn't know about, so I hope you'll accept my apology, but please tell us what happened. Please let us make a documentary about it. Please take me in to the Crabby Joe's showroom, the Crabby Joe's archives. That's where I want to go. I want to go to the Crabby Joe's archives. Please. Please. I know they're somewhere in Ottawa. I know they're in Ottawa. Okay. Or Ingersoll. Same thing. I am sure there were talks, when, apparently there's been multiple capitals of Canada during the time. I've heard it was Kingston, then they went to Ottawa. I'm sure it's possible that maybe they're like, well, Ingersoll's looking pretty good, It's just sad, man. I just feel like, and the annoying thing must be to the restaurant itself that, like, I certainly don't want anyone to be sending them any sort of malice. This is kind of my own thing, and I'm sorry I use harsh sort of phrasing. But the restaurant's probably like, dude, we changed the logo in 2017. Why are you being so weird about this? My answer to that is well, there comes a time in every man, woman, child, everybody out there, no matter who you are, where you go through a serious Crabby Joe's obsession. Everybody goes through this, and the time has come upon me. I don't know if I've been cursed. I don't know if I need this to be exorcised out of my head. I was raised Catholic, so maybe it's time to get in touch with my Catholic side again. Maybe, you know what? We haven't seen a new Christian Catholic sect for a while, so I think there's room for a sort of Crabby Joe's Catholic sort of sect, because that would be kind of cool. Imagine, you know what I was thinking? Okay, so apparently that, like, sometimes I've seen this, you see churches close down because there's not enough attendance. You see them turned into condos. It's like, what if one of the ways we get the people back in the churches, we go to Crabby Joe's archives, we get all of the Crabby Joe's gear, the signs, they give them to us because of the kindness of their hearts, Obsidian Group, and they say, yes, you can start a new form of Catholicism with Crabby Joe's IP free of charge. It can be called Crabby Joe's Catholicism, and we're totally cool with that. And what if, St. Crabby's, St. Joe, so the churches are all called St. Crabby's or St. Joe's, and it's not all, even saints. I think saints are mostly human, right? So, like, yeah, this guy was crabby. He said a couple of rude things, but he also changed the law of lives. He gave a lot of people hope. I was looking through the Crabby Joe's Facebook archives, and he gave back to, the company gave to charity or gives to charity. He's at charity events. He puts the Santa hat on. So, I mean, like, in many ways, Pope Leo, what are you waiting for? If you don't canonize this man, we might need to split off and do our own thing. And Obsidian Group, take me into the Crabby Joe's archives. Let's get the old signs, and then we save the old churches, and they don't have to turn to condos. But we have a housing crisis. But what if our form of Catholicism says, hey, when we're not doing mass and half-price apps and stuff like that, you are allowed to live here. Okay? This might be one of the best religious sects of all time. So get on board, or that's your own decision. That's totally fine, but that's just my kind of thought process lately. Another thing I have been thinking of is, if things don't go the way that I'm interested in, if, we're not able to get this Crabby Joe's, St. Crabby's sort of Catholicism off the ground, or Obsidian Group does not want to bring Joe back, again, this is such a complicated issue, because what if Joe wants to be left alone? What if there were some backdoor rulings as to why he is not the face of the company anymore? I know I'm being a little bit nosy, but to be curious just reminds me that I still am a human with a soul. So it's just one of those things where it's like, am I doing the wrong thing, or am I just being a human? But anyways, if any of this stuff doesn't work out, if we don't get Crabby back, if this whole Crabby Joe Catholicism thing just simply does not work out at all, well, I then have to ask myself, well, maybe your whole time in Canadian entertainment was leading up to you opening up a sort of F you type rude, in your face franchise, where you make your own beloved character. You go out on your own. You don't just sort of, or you base it off of someone you don't look to the past, you look to the future. And I thought of a name this morning for this, and I posted an Instagram story about it, but I was like, I don't know if the world's ready for this. I don't know if I'm just like being crazy and this isn't actually a good idea. But I was thinking my sort of rude, rebel without a cause, sort of, you take the mashed potatoes and you fart on them. Sort of franchise. My idea is to call it Diaper O'Toole's. So I just could see that as a franchise all over Canada, all over Ontario. And I have to ask you, if you had the chance, I feel like, dang, man, I wish I could travel back in time to 1996. If I was there at the beginning of Crabby Joe's, like, oh my God, that's like the beginning of freaking, I don't know, Microsoft or something like that. Like, I wanted to see that story. I wish I was a part of that story. I would have loved to open up a franchise back then, but it's like, well, maybe we have to, grow up and start our own thing, and that's exactly what I am interested in starting. If it has to be that way, I want to start Diaper O'Toole's, or I don't know if that's, I don't know. It's so hard to know if that's the right name, but Cranky Mike's, no. What about Pissed Off Brendan, or uh angry Kevin? Annoying Matt. It's Marcus. Oh, it's F you. F you, Chris. F you, Chris. No. Oh, Martin. Frick. I don't know. Maybe Diaper O'Toole's is good enough. Well, he's just like, he's a restaurateur. He's in the kitchen for 24 hours. He's 24 hours, 7 days a week. He doesn't go to the washroom. So his thing is he goes to the washroom while he's cooking. And that's just what you get. It's some of the best food you've ever tasted, but there is the mixture of smell is just like awful, but I don't know if this is the answer. Oh, it's hard. That's why I wish that there was a biopic on this, because then we could find out more. We could really find out, what, who thought, where Crabby Joe's come from, because I'm sure there were a lot of meetings that went just like this, where people were scratching their heads being like, stupid Sam's? Oh, I feel like nothing's working for me right now. Diaper O'Toole's was making me laugh a lot this morning, but now I don't even know if it's good enough. Oh. So there's Crabby, there's Angry, there's Pissed Off, there is Super Annoyed, there is Bothered, there is Stinkin', there is I Hate You, there is You Don't Want to Mess With Me, there is I Hate You, Then names, as far as names go, we have Matthew, Mark, we have John, Jeff, we have Tyler, we have Chris, we have Ed, we have Tony, we have CeeLo, TJ, Carter. I like the name Carter. Stinky. Mad Carters. So there's so many options we could choose from. And Diaper O'Toole's was funny to me this morning, but I don't know if it's anything. Puke. I don't know. I'm really stuck here. I'm in a dark place. I felt like I was really giving out a lot of information at first, and now I'm just crashing, and my mind isn't working as I want it to be, but that is because what you can use too much of your mind and not use any of your soul. So maybe those were just. I honestly, if I'm going to be real right now, I think over the past couple days, I have actually overloaded my brain with information, articles about Crabby Joes that I'm literally kind of incapable of. I don't like being that humorous about it or thinking of anything else except for this man who's just been so beaten down by the world, so angry. He has such severe anger problems, but his parents, Crabby Joanne, Crabby Joe Sr., and his dog, Woofers, who, of course, he was always biting so many people in their neighborhood. He was just as crabby as the rest of the family. The crabbiest family you have ever seen in your life. Listowel, Ontario. If you don't know where that is, open up a freaking atlas, because it should be circled when you go to the Canadian page, because right there it's like, well, this is a very important city in Canadian history. You should know as much as your Torontos, your Montreals, your freaking St. John's. No, Listowel, because that is where a great story of this nation started. The story of a son who was just so angry, had so much rage. He was just so set off by how society operates that he decided to take it out on the kitchen. He decided to take it out on his favorite nacho recipe, and he was just, he just had so many ideas that he said, I'm going out on my own and I am starting a restaurant. And his parents called him crazy. And he said, I'm not just starting a restaurant. I'm starting a restaurant. And it's going to be named after me. And I'm dropping Joe Jr. from my name, Joe Sr. I'm very mad at you. I'm very mad at you, Crabby Joe Sr. It's called Crabby Joe's, because that's all there ever was. There's just me. That's all I can rely on right now. I gotta go start this franchise, and it will be in our hometown of Listowel, Ontario. Goodbye, Mom and Dad. And I left the home. And it started off as, he had a pot, he had a pan, he had an oven, he had a generator. And he was just out in this Listowel town square, and he was just making nachos. He was just making nachos in the Listowel town square, and everyone brought him construction materials. They brought him wooden slabs, they brought him nails, they brought him tiles, they brought him HVAC equipment, and piece by piece he put it all together. And Crabby Joe, he grew up hearing of the tales of the three little pigs, and how a house of sticks, a house of sticks, and a house of, what did the other little pig make his house out of? Well, a house of sticks and a house of leaves. I would say like it was like fluff or something, but I don't know what the first little pig, and that makes me feel so sad, and maybe that's what made Crabby Joe sad too. Because he thought to himself, what was the first pig's house made of? What was the first pig's house made of? I cannot make the mistake as the first pig's house. So he angrily, he took all the freaking materials that people were giving to him in the town square, and he put it all together piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. But he was just so angry. He was so angry the whole time. His anger came back because he could only feel relief when he was cooking nachos in the kitchen. That's all he could feel relief, when he was just cooking those nachos in the kitchen. And sometimes he would cook pita bread and make an artichoke dip, or he'd make a very large beer he used to be able to drink. He'd make a loaded fries. But when he was building, he didn't have that relief that he had in the kitchen, so he got very angry again. But he put it together piece by 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 piece. And it was finally finished in the year 1996. The year 1996, he finished his restaurant. And he said, I am going to be the face of this restaurant. He hired a photographer. And he said, could you take my picture? And the photographer said, I'll do one better. I'll draw you. I'll draw you as a cartoon. You don't want your picture around. I have always wanted to experiment with my drawings. And if you allow me to draw you, you can use this as fair use for the rest of time, for the rest of time, for the rest of time. So the photographer drew a cartoon of Crabby Joe, inspired by some of his favorite comic strips, Beetle and Bailey, The Family Circus, For Better or Worse. And he showed Crabby Joe, the cartoon, aka the real life drawing that would hang upon his business. And he said, Mr. Crabby Joe, here is my picture of you. What do you think, Crabby? Lay it on me. And Crabby Joe said, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. And for the first time in Crabby Joe's life, he felt joy. He felt joy. Because in the kitchen, he could only feel relief. But he felt joy. He felt a great joy that he had never felt in his life. And he said, we must duplicate this wonderful drawing you have made, and we must duplicate it, and we must put it on the top of all Crabby Joes all around the world. And Crabby Joe didn't know that the world was much bigger than Ontario. But that didn't matter. He never needed to learn. Well, maybe he never needed to learn. He went in his car. He went in his car for a bit. And then he decided to take cabs because he said, I'm too angry. So he took cabs after cab after cab after cab from town to town. And he went to empty parking lots. And he did the same thing. He brought an oven in the cab and he just started cooking the nachos. He had the oven and the generator. With elements on top, and he started cooking the nachos. And every time he did this, the townspeople, they would bring all the building materials, and he'd build another thing. And first it took a couple of years to build the first location, but he got it down to a science that he could build a Crabby Joe's in 5 days. So they started springing up in Belleville. They started springing up in Angus. They started springing up in Listowel, which of course is home of Letterkenny, which is an international phenomenon. They based it off of that. So there is an undertone of Crabby Joe in that series, which has been shown internationally. It's an international sensation, and so should Crabby. That's what he thought. He thought, I should be as big as Donald. I should be as big as Chuck E. Cheese. I should be as big as Tom and Jerry. But that never happened for him. He never got his due, and he felt, I'm so talented. No one is as generous as me, because not only do I cook amazing food, after 9 p.m., I give it to you half off. Man, I give it to you half off. He never got the recognition. He never got the recognition that he needed. So that is when Crabby Joe made the deal with the devil. He said, I cannot handle the stress of doing it myself. I need to go corporate. He was going around from town to town taking care. He didn't have a single cook. He didn't have a single waiter. He didn't have a single dishwasher. He was taking cabs. He was taking them from Listowel to Kitchener, to Waterloo, to Hamilton, to Angus, all the way back to Ingersoll. He always went back to Ingersoll, and he had a bunk bed in the first location, and he just couldn't do it. So he said, I'm gonna have to start franchising it out. So he started franchising it out, and he started and was going great. The money was better than ever. He started taking vacations. He started seeing the world. And I finally figured it out. Sometime in the late 2000s or 2010s, Crabby Joe saw a movie, and he read the book. It was called Into the Wild. And he said, I've done what I needed to do. It's time for me to leave and go, just do what I have to do. So he started walking. Just like many had walked before, Many had walked before, and he started walking. He thought he was going to go into the wilderness. But then he went to the movies again. This time he was up in Port St. John, and he saw a movie theater, and he only took breaks at movie theaters. He couldn't bear going into another restaurant. Because it brought back too much pain. And in between this time was when he said, take my face off of it. You could use my name. Use my name as my logo. I give you permission to use my signature. They'll know it's me, but I just want my face off here. So he was in Port St. John, and he loved the movies. He just loved the movies. After seeing Into the Wild, he just saw everything. So he went to the movies, and he saw a movie was playing, and it was called King Richard. And he watched the movie, and he just fell in love with the story. He fell in love with this wonderful story, King Richard of King Richard. He was following it all award season. He just thought he was so fond of, this story. And then, he just became so obsessed. Anytime he could find a time to go see King Richard, he would go see it, and it just took over his life. It took over his life. He thought to himself, I'll never see a movie as good as King Richard. And he just related so much to every part of the movie. He saw tennis as cooking, and the tennis balls as spaghetti and meatballs. And he just was like, this is me. This is me. And he got so sad because he said, I love this movie. I want to become an actor. So then he got an agent and he started auditioning for commercials. First it started, he was in a Chapters commercial. Then Chapters went out of business and it turned into Indigo. And then he got into a Canadian Tire commercial. And then he got into a freaking messy fight on set. He did not like what craft services was serving up that day. He had no idea the emotional attachment he had to nachos. This is the first time he had tried nachos since he walked away from the kitchen scene. And he always ate blindfolded because it just brought him back too much. When he had visualized the food, it brought him back to the kitchen in his former life. But he took one bite of a nacho and everything came back to him. Everything came back, his whole history, and he just flipped out on everyone. He flipped out on everyone in the Canadian film industry, and he said, this is your fault. This is your fault. This is your fault. This is your fault. And he was so embarrassed that he had no choice but to hail a cab. And he hailed that cab, and the cab knew exactly where he was going. He was so familiar with every cab driver in Canada. The cab driver knew exactly where he was going. And the cab driver drove him right back to the house of Crabby Joe, Crabby Joe Sr., and Woofers. He knocked on the door, and his mom opened. And his dad opened another door. They had two front doors. That's just how they rolled. And they said, Joe, you are our son. It's time for you to come back and live with us again. And he said, I just had the crazy this past couple of years. And they said, well, we'd love to hear all about it. And they closed the door, and he's been living a very private life since then. So it's very interesting and it's beautiful. So he's living a private life, and I mean, maybe I should have not been so harsh on the logo redesign, because maybe he's okay with his name out there. The money's helping his, family and all that stuff. His parents are in retirement age. They're both teachers, and he just wants to live a quiet life, and maybe I should have respected that. So it's a very introspective sort of end to the podcast, but thank you for joining me on that. I've been reading a book about remote viewing recently, and I think I just saw it all happen in front of me in real time, and I just had to let you know. And you are my monitor, and you saw that happen. That was insane. I can't believe it. We made history again. Thank you for listening to the most important podcast with a focus on Canadian entertainment. This was stunning. Thank you so much. You guys are the reason why we do this every day. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic next little while. We'll be back so soon. Thank you very much for listening to the Canadian Entertainment Podcast hosted by Ben Sager. We'll see you very soon. Thank you very much. Bye.